In this video, I'd like to look at a program that works with a dynamic table in HTML and JavaScript. And the code for this can be found zipped up at this URL seen here. Okay. So here's how it's arranged. So in that zip, there is this Warhol.htm and also this folder of faces. So I have different famous people and pictures of them, and they are GIFs with a transparent property. So I'm going to have some color show through them. So that's what's in there, and all the image files are in a folder called faces. So you'll see that in code where I'm referring to the folder. So that's the file structure. So I'm going to close my Explorer now that I've told you the file structure. And let's run this, open with live server, and here it is. So there is this table, and these sort of controls at the bottom are also part of the table. And so I have a sort of a pre-existing table, but I can also add to it. So I've just added a row, and I can say right now that I can choose between the 3 rows. But if I were to add a row, now I have a choice between the 4 rows. So it's not only updating my table, but updating the options in my drop-down select. I can add a column. So now my columns, there are 4 columns. I can add a 5th column. Does that. I can pick a given cell. Let's say row 2, column 3, row 2, column 3, this sort of very green Andy Warhol, and I can change that to Abraham Lincoln. And then I can change the color of Abraham Lincoln to sort of all red. So there's my red Abraham Lincoln. So I can change, I can add rows, I can add columns, I can pick a cell, I can change the image displaying in that cell, I can change the color behind that cell. So I'm changing, I have an image inside a cell, inside a TD element, an IMG element inside a TD element, and then I can change either the source of the image that's here or the color of the TD that's down there. So that's what we're playing with here. Okay, so let's look at the code. Bunch of meta tags, title, some style. The background color was black, the color was white. The inputs were the same, but when I hover over the inputs, they flip. So that's just a standard thing I tend to do in style. And some a little space before my selects. So that's my little bit of style. Okay. Here is my body, the start of my page. So here's my header. Here's my table. I have some rows. Just I called it my first row and my second row. And I'm sticking the images in there, and I have a certain, as you saw when I was running it, I can select a given one of the pictures and change the picture. So I'm giving my cells and my images IDs, so then I can access them. So my cells have an ID like this, row underscore a number underscore column underscore some number. And then the images have a similar ID, but with IMG thrown in the front. And so the first ones, I've just explicitly put them in there and given them this name, and I gave them the style. So I have some fixed background color to begin with, all the height of 200. Okay, so that is the beginning. That's the beginning rows, 2 rows, 3 columns. So that's what we have to start. And then I have a row where I have my controls. So the control to add a row or a column, or so here's my add row, here's my add column, that was a row. Here are my colors. Sorry, here's my choosing which row and which column. So originally there were 2 columns and 3 rows. Here's my big select for the images. So that was here. Select this row, select that image, and then select the colors. So those were rows in my table. Okay, and then finally now, and my buttons called, so I had 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons calling functions. So add a row, add a table, change an image, and change a color. Okay. Add a row. So I'm going to the table. I'm finding out from the table how many rows it has. And then I have a bunch of rows at the bottom. So I'm not just going to simply append child, because I have these controls and they're also part of my table. So I want to more selectively insert. And that's what this -3 is about, to sort of get this row where I want it. So I have my table. I'm using an insert row, which belongs to a table. And I am giving it a particular position. And this -3 position is based on that I want the controls to stay at the bottom. So the row I'm inserting shouldn't be at the very bottom, but should be at the bottom of the images that are already there. So if I add another table row, it'll be under the images, but above the controls. So that's what this is about. And now I am grabbing my first row, because I want to know how many things there were in it. And so I'm using that, getting the number of cells in that row and counting their length. So I'm seeing how many items there are. And then I'm getting, I had the new row that I just made, and I'm inserting a cell into it, and then giving that cell the desired properties. And I'm in a loop, so I'm going to insert many cells. And then I'm giving that cell an ID so I can reference. I'm giving it a specific background color. That's that bright yellow. So the row I bring in is bright yellow. The size of it is 200 pixels. I am going to put an image into that. And when I bring them in, I bring in the Warhol image. So I'm creating a new image. I'm giving that image an ID. I'm giving the image a source. Here is the folder that all the images were in. And then I'm specifically choosing for my new row the Andy Warhol image, the Warhol_stamp.gif. And the whole design is based on an Andy Warhol work. So that's why he gets priority. I gave it an alt property of just quote, quote, and then I set the height of the image to 200 pixels, and I had my new cell and my new image, and I appended the new image into my cell. And that was in a loop. And now I have to fix the number of my select needs a new option. So here I am grabbing my select. I'm creating a new option. Again, we're playing this game of the table has more rows at the bottom than our controls. So it's not the total number of rows of the column that you see in the options, but sort of I'll have to subtract off a bit to sort of discount the controls at the bottom. So I take my text and the value of the option end up to be row number -2, and then I am adding that option. So that's adding a row. So we did sort of an insert row, and then I had to loop through how many columns there were. To add a column, I grab the table. I'm finding out how many rows there are. I'm looping over those rows. And then I'm grabbing that row. And in that row, I'm inserting a column. I'm not, in terms of inserting a cell, I have to play games with rows, but when I'm inserting a column, it's just at the end. So if I insert a column, it's just at the end here. Okay. And so there I was. I inserted the cell. I didn't have to worry about its positioning, so I just inserted it, put it on the end. I gave it an ID. I gave it that yellow color. I made it 200. I created an image. I gave the image an ID. I used the Warhol image. I gave it an alt. I gave it a height. I put it in the cell. Now I had to update my other drop-down list because now I've added a column, so I need a new option in that list. So I'm grabbing the cell column select, creating a new option, and giving the text and value to that option and adding that option to my select. So when I add, right now I have 4 columns. If I add another, and the list goes to 4, but if I add another column and have 5 columns, now it's updated to 5. If I choose to change the image, I find out I go to my drop-down select and find what row I want to change the image for, what column I want to change the image for, and then I am concatenating together the ID of the image based on those 2 numbers. This was the way I was making my IDs. And then I'm going to the page, document get element by ID with that ID and changing the source. Here is my folder faces / and then I'm going to the drop down with the images. And again, that drop down with the images had just the image names as the values. So that is change image. So here I am. I find the cell they want to change the image of, and then here I am changing the source of that image based on what's in the drop-down select. And then the last function was to change the color. So once again, what cell am I changing the color of? Grab the row, grab the column. Here I am constructing the color. So I'm grabbing I'll call it a $, but you may call it a hashtag. The drop downs for the colors the values are hex. So 20% is 33 and 80% is CC. So the values are hex. So I'm going to use the hex code for the color. I'm working in RGB, so they're going to be 3 parts. So I'm bringing together the $, and the hex for the red, the hex for the green, the hex for the blue, constructing the color. I'm constructing the ID of the cell. I just did that sort of within get element by ID. I could have made a variable for that, but I didn't. But I get the cell that I want to change the color of, and style that background color, and then set it equal to the color. Then I just concatenate it together based on the 3 red, green, and blue choices. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you, just a bit of fun with dynamic tables. Thanks for your attention.